Let's go on to our guest speaker now. It's my privilege to introduce Milan Georgia. You guys, most of you guys, have heard him talk before. Milan was one of the fortunate Americans to get a notification from the President of the United States that said, welcome to the United States Army. So he got drafted, and then he got undrafted a few years later. That's probably part of his talk, so I won't talk about that part. But he flew attack helicopters in Vietnam. And he and I connected at the Metroport Rotary Club. When I first moved here, I looked for the nearest, closest Rotary Club. This is almost like a Rotary commercial program today. Because I didn't know anybody in the area. We moved here for my wife's job. So how am I going to meet anybody? I've got to get out. People aren't going to come to me. So I looked for the nearest Rotary Club, visited it, liked it, joined it. Veterans Day was coming up. Somebody knew that I was a veteran. They asked if I would like to lead the program, and I asked who here are veterans. About half a dozen of the members, or about 20 members, half a dozen raised their hands. So now I know who's going to speak at Memorial Day and Veterans Day right next time. And Milan was one of them. And I encourage Milan to tell his story, and he has not stopped telling his story since, which is absolutely amazing. So Milan, welcome, and I'll turn the floor to you.
Okay. Well, everybody would say, if you know anything about that patch, that this is an old patch. And it is. It came out in 2023. And it was to commemorate our retreat from Vietnam when our combat troops actually were told to leave and let the little guys handle it. But if you really look at it that way again, 2025 is the 50th anniversary of when the Vietnam War actually ended on April 30th, 1975. So the patch kind of becomes relevant in two ways. First of all, the 2023, and now this year, 2025. Before I go for any further, I'd just like to call out my neighbor. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it. We're not going to bore you with two same stories. So, in this very room, I don't know how long ago it was, but because I've been around 77 years. Anyway, a long time ago, I met a guy named Fisk Hanley, who, if you know his story, or if you don't, I'll tell you about it, was a pilot in World War II, and I think it was B-17s. Sorry? Right? Anyway, he got shot down over Japan, and he actually went into a concentration camp there. And there was a movie made about that, and I can never remember the name of the movie, but it was a guy lifting a log, and if he doesn't get the log over his head, they're going to kill him. Unbroken, yeah, right. And apparently Fisk actually witnessed that. So I came up after he finished speaking, and I said, how do you remember all this stuff? And he said, man, I don't. I sat down after I got back from World War II and started writing about that. He said, because it was medicinal, and it really got all that garbage out of my head. And now I speak about it, and that's even more medicinal. And he said, so if you have memories or you're fighting, the crazies from the war, go ahead and write it all down and speak about it as often as you can to get it out of your memory banks, because otherwise it will eat you alive. And I thought, that's a good idea. So I sat down and started writing. I came up with 27 different chapters about the 116th Assault Helicopter Company that I was part of during that year in Vietnam. We started out in Cu Chi, and which is a little place a little northwest of Saigon at that time, which is now Ho Chi Minh City. Boy, life changes. And so when we were stationed there, we thought, well, this is the cat's meow. We can run right down to Saigon anytime we want to and get all the parts we need, black market. It's right there. It's like a Walmart. And believe me, we couldn't get our own parts because they would intercept the shipments and put them out on the black market and sell them like double to us, the guys who needed the parts to keep their helicopter working. So in a lot of cases, we just go down to the black market, pay double, and then bring it back and let the maintenance guys put it on or in or wherever it belonged. I always try to dedicate every presentation to someone I knew that is now on the wall. And this is dedicated to a fellow 116th Assault Helicopter Company gentleman named Richard Dick Salmon. Richard, or Dick, he went by, was a captain of one of the troop carrier platoons. Being a member of the Hornets, the troop carriers were the Yellow Jackets, the Wasps, and we were the Stingers, the gunship platoon. And so Dick died in Vietnam on November 15th, 1970, while practicing auto rotations. Now, auto rotation is a way that you descend in a helicopter like a leaf and preferably put it down very, very gently when your engine fails. That was one of the best things about the Hueys we were flying in Vietnam. Only had one engine, not two. Now they have two. Oh gosh, figure it out. If your engine goes out, you got a second engine, man. You can fly it back home. If your engine goes out and you only got one, you better figure out a way to save your ass. So I flew in the gunships. We had all the armament and we were extra heavy. And so I usually bring something with me to show you, but if you were in a troop carrier and you lost your engine, preferably without the troops, because if you had the troops on the helicopter, it would descend a lot quicker, but not as fast as a fully loaded gunship would. So when you were in a gunship and lost your engine, it was like dropping a brick. So you had about 14 seconds to try to save yourself and perform an auto rotation. Someday I'll show you the auto rotation film. If you're ever in one, it scares the living bejesus out of you. And even if you bend the skids up around the doors, if as long as you could walk away from it, it was a good landing. So Dick died while practicing auto rotations, and he was doing that because he wanted to be the instructor for his platoon. That's how dedicated Dick was on doing things, for the platoon and his men. These were the different aircraft that we flew in Vietnam, most of which were either Bell helicopters or some Boeings. When it first started, we actually flew the one underneath the Boeing Chinook, the Piasecki H-21, and they used to call it the flying banana. Troop carriers mostly. But Sikorsky got in there too. He virtually invented the helicopter, a Russian. And we had the crane as well over there in Vietnam. We had the Cobras, but we never took the Cobras because the Cobras were tandem seating, gunner and then the pilot, and then we had door gunners, so we sat across from each other in the Huey, and then we had door gunners in the back. Every time we would break, the door gunners were there unloading machine guns and covering our tail. In the Cobra, when you fired your rockets and then tried to break, nobody was covering your rear end. So you could very easily get shot down. And when they first got that over in Vietnam, First Cavalry got them and promptly went out and lost about 1,400 of them being shot down or shot out from under. Big Mission was the 116. We called it Big Mission because in Cu-Chi we got transferred to Chulai. So we were under the auspices of the 25th Infantry Division in Cu-Chi. Great outfit, crack outfit. They did everything for us, we did everything for them. We got transferred to the Americal Division up in Chulai. They were loosey-goosey. They had no organization. They didn't know what the hell they were doing half the time. And they didn't really give a damn about us. So we were a full-fledged assault helicopter company. We could run the whole mission for you. We did command and control at 2,500 feet. We transported the troops in with the 2 troop-carrying platoons that we had, and we covered them while they were in there with the gunships. Okay, so we were whiz-bang, one-stop shopping. When they moved us up to Chulai, they didn't know what to do with us. So we got all the goofy missions. Our mission in Chulai was called Search and Destroy. And we did that until the cows came home. Good practice, but we didn't like it very much. So the big mission they finally gave us was a complete mission where we would do everything involving the troop carriers, the command and control, and the gunships all at one time. We were a little rusty because we hadn't done it for about a month and a half. And we're thinking, oh man, we got to pull this off and make it slicker than a snotty marble. Because if we don't, they'll never let us do this again. And so we worked like crazy to make it go. And the Wasps were involved, and so were the Yellow Jackets. Hello. And so were the Stingers. And when we got up to Chulai, we took those back doors off. Now, every door on the helicopter is part of the structural integrity of the helicopter. We took the front doors off in Cu-Chi, and then we got in Chulai, because it was higher elevation, we took the back doors off as well. Let us get more fuel in the tank. When the Bell engineers found out that we were taking the doors off, woo! They could have had a cow. They wanted us reprimanded and everything else, and we just said, you know, okay, we'll put them back on. We never did. That's the Charlie model without the door. Now, think about it. With the door, what does it block? The gas tank. So every time we landed, if we didn't put the little deadbolt stuff, you know, that kill the electric static, if we didn't destatic the aircraft, there was always a chance by pulling that door forward with a live nozzle of JP4 that you could blow up. And we thought, well, that's so stupid. So we just took the doors off, and then you didn't have to worry about that. You just opened the gas can, the gas turret, and put in your nozzle. JP4, and refuel fuel. You were back rolling again. So the full big mission was we were going to come and pick up the Americal Division. They were late. We weren't. We picked them up. We took them to the LZ. We inserted them. And it was like, this is at the Medal of Honor Museum. Fear is ever present with anyone who's ever been in combat. Overcoming fear and proceeding with the job at hand is what's known as doing your job. That's what we thought we were doing when we even were doing over and above our job. People would say, oh, we're going to write you up and get you a decoration for that. We were going, we're just doing our job, man. Okay, so doing your job, but anything above that level is truly what they call beyond the call and just plain heroic. I'm not a hero. I'm alive. And I've got all my digits and some of my sanity. So I feel pretty good about it. No problem. But it seemed like every time we took the American vision out, these guys were waiting. They seemed to know where we were going. And I'm thinking, there's got to be an intelligence leak somewhere. So, when you're in combat, usually if you're smart, on the way in, you're going to say a prayer. And if you don't have religion, believe me, after your first bout of combat, you will get religion, whether you like it or not. And I prayed that I would live through that. We dropped them off, and all of a sudden, immediately, there's a firefight going on. And we're getting calls from the guys on the ground. Roll in here, roll in there. We're popping smoke. We got some problems. And this is what it looked like. They had a field of guys that popped up in the grass, and they had pith helmets on, which tells you that's the NBA. These guys are the same guys who fought the French, the same guys that fought the Japanese. These guys are professional soldiers. Now, in my peripheral vision, which back then was excellent and now is non-existent, I actually saw this dude stand up with a rifle out of my eye. And I thought, oh boy, this is not going to be good, because he's pointing it right at us. Just as we banked, he fired. Thank God we banked. It hit the top door frame. And, sorry boys. I was seated flying the aircraft. The bullet hit the top door frame. We're banking at an angle. And I'm thinking, this is either going to hit me, or it's going to hit the aircraft commander, or somebody. This is going to hurt. And so we're banking, and pow! And there's this loud slam. It's a metal slam. And then my feet, which were on pedals, controlling the aircraft, went together. And I thought, hey, you better take it. So the aircraft commander took it. And I thought, what the hell just happened? And I moved my foot back and put it back on the pedals. And I went, that's when the pain started coming. What had happened was the bullet had hit the door frame, thank God, and part of that door frame broke off, piece probably about the size of my pinky here, tip of my pinky, and went into my ankle. So I'm thinking, this is really awkward. This is the first time we've had a mission that we've got the full mission, and we're about to break off of this with the lead gunships and take me to the hospital. No, we're not doing that. So I just shut up and said nothing else. And I kept going, because my ankle kept getting bigger and bigger, and it really, really hurt. We never tried to land in the LZ. We always tried to skid in on the back skids, throwing guys off, and then roll out. Because if you didn't, you started taking fire so bad that it would fill your aircraft up with bullet holes. We stayed for the entire mission. We were even doing dust off, because dust off was busy picking up other people in other battle areas. I am not knocking dust off. Those guys were terrific, but there wasn't enough of them. And so a lot of times we had to do our own dust off. We would either call back some of the platoon to pick up wounded, or we would unload our armament and then go back in and get them with the Charlie model gunship. We flew for almost 2 hours and 20 minutes until the mission was complete. And thank God I wasn't the aircraft commander. I was just the pilot. So the aircraft commander sitting to my left was flying most of the time. And by then he was pretty much exhausted. And he said, you know, I think I'm gonna let you take it and fly for a while. And I said, okay. I'm trying my ankle and my ankle's not bending. So I got on the controls and I'm trying to fly and maneuver the aircraft. It takes both hands and both feet when you fly a helicopter. If you don't use your feet, you fall out of trim. And consequently, you get weird breezes coming through and you guys can't fire their machine guns because you're out of trim and their bullets are going like all over the place. So being out of trim is not a good thing. So we always go through the 4-step process where you speak your words like, you take it. And you visibly see the other guy come on the controls. I've got it. And so then you let go after you feel him and see him on the controls and you release them. But we had an unscheduled stop when he said, what the hell is wrong with you? You can't keep this thing in trim. And I said, yeah, I know, we had a little accident earlier in the mission. He said, when did that happen? I said, on the very first insertion. And he said, Jesus, what a bad time for that to happen. So I go to the hospital. We fly right in there, we're pulling out all the circuit breakers. So we're gonna fire these rockets at the hospital. And we land in the hospital helipad. And he says, get out. Well, they come out anyway and take you. So I said, okay, fine. So I jumped into their arms. He cranked up, flew back to the company area. Later, they came out to visit. Nice. And that way I got a ride home. But when they get you in there, it's the surgeons and it's the doctors. And surgeons like to cut and doctors like to explore. So that little bitty hole in my ankle, okay, becomes like a big hole. Let's make sure we get it all out. And they're in there just going crazy. They make quick work of it and they bandage me up. And it says, oh yeah, by the way, since all water is non-potable, don't rinse your wound in the non-potable stuff. Make sure you have sterile water. And if you don't, it's going to swell up again. Then you'll have an infection, gangrene. We may have to cut your ankle off. That's lovely. So you get the medal that nobody really wants. And it's just for a little deal in my ankle. And it's that goes through, all right, Milan Georgia, yes sir, and that medal on you. That medal gives you a lot of color with the other medals. Because it's purple. Amigo Al, my Facebook buddy, is now on, has told us that he is the platoon photographer. And he's provided me pictures that I never would have guessed anybody had. As a matter of fact, he's tried to blackmail me in a couple of years. However, I said, all right, wise guy, you're the guy that's supposed to have all the pictures of the platoon. Do you have one of me getting wounded? And he said, oh, hell yeah. And I said, can I get that from you? And he said, sure. So there it is, the leaky ankle. Just me and the hooch maid now, because I'm grounded. And the hooch maid is uglier than all get out. But I'm trying to keep her from rummaging through all of our stuff. Because earlier, we had captured some guys crawling around in the open, and they actually had information about the platoon. Name, rank, serial number of everybody in the platoon. And it's only because we went out and hired these wonderful people to work for us, paid them a good wage and everything. But when she's done, she just goes over to the sand dune and lights up a joint. I mean, marijuana is everywhere. So she smokes the joint when she's on break, which is a lot. Because she can't rifle through our, field gear and look up who we are, where we were born, our social security numbers, our name, our rank, who we're married to, whatever. Best compliment I ever got was when I had a grunt come up to me and said, the greatest sound is the wop, wop, wop coming towards me of a helicopter. Thank God for chopper pilots. Whoa. And I said, I was a gunship pilot. So very rarely I ever pick guys up. But on occasions I did. And I said, thank you for that compliment. Vietnam's veterans didn't just survive the battlefield, they survived coming home to a world that didn't understand their sacrifice by leaving. There were years that I never ever talked about my service in the little country of Vietnam. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. If students think their senior year has been ruined, remind them that from 64 to 70, many seniors took their senior trip to Vietnam. Thank you very much. Okay, I think I'm supposed to stand up.
I wonder if we could get all Vietnam veterans in the room to stand up.